Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Always Irish Show. Thank you for joining me. As always, you could find this show on the YouTube website. Hit subscribe. I do appreciate it. On the Twitter machine, type in the search bar, Always Irish, or at JKZND4. You can find me there as well. Emails, alwaysirishnd@gmail.com. Thank you to everybody who's been emailing me, even the people that don't like me that are taking time to email me 8 paragraphs. Like, it's one thing if you write in the YouTube section, you're an idiot or whatever. But for somebody to pull the email off the screen, take the time to write 4 big paragraphs of where I'm wrong and why I'm so short-sighted and all this stuff, that's next level stuff. So especially if you don't like me in my show, I appreciate you taking the time to email me. That's some next level stuff. And I have a few trolls who continue to do it. So keep them coming. I appreciate it. Okay. Merchandise link. You can find it in the description. I saw a couple more of these hats on Twitter over the weekend. People are getting them. I hope it keeps the sun out of your eyes. Okay. So that's all good stuff. Let's get into this. Okay. So the question I pose here is a very simple one, and it seems like it has a very obvious answer, but let's explore. I was thinking about this over the weekend. It was bugging me. But I have a silver lining light at the end of the tunnel here, okay? So follow me. What are the expectations in your mind for the rest of the Brian Kelly tenure at Notre Dame? What do you expect out of these last 4 seasons? His contract expires after 24, so he has 4 more years, 1 full recruiting cycle in and out to reach his goals before probably retiring or going to ESPN or doing something, okay? So after a dozen years on the job, all that he's accomplished since the 2016 burn down rebuild, I think the only acceptable expectation is to win multiple playoff games. If that's not the expectation after a dozen years on the job and all that Notre Dame's done the last few years, what are we doing here? Like it can't be where towards the end of the guy's career, the expectations go down when he hasn't achieved anything in the postseason yet. So to me, the only realistic expectation that's appropriate is win a couple playoff games. If not 2 in a year to win a title, you better win 1 here and another one somewhere. That has to be the expectation. I don't even know why we're doing this otherwise. Why do I have this room? I'm just going to set it on fire, okay? So to me, that's the only bar that there is left, okay? But let's look at these 4 seasons that remain, because this is very interesting, okay? 2021 is arguably the most manageable remaining schedule. Maybe you could argue 2024, and we'll get there, okay? So the 2021 schedule's very manageable. You're at Florida State in Tallahassee to start. You have Cincinnati, Southern Cal again, back to playing them after our ACC agreement last year. So you start at Tallahassee. You have Cincy, you have Southern Cal, of course, North Carolina, and then Wisconsin. Those are the highlights of that schedule, okay? Compared to the other ones we're going to go over, that's kind of more on the favorable end as far as Notre Dame schedules go and when you're catching these teams in their given arc or, descent or whatever, okay? Here's the problem. 2021 is a rebuild year at Notre Dame in so many key areas, okay? So, you're looking at a new defensive coordinator, a new quarterback, a new offensive line, hopefully somewhat of a new offensive scheme, okay? So you have all these things going on. Is the playoff a realistic goal for next year? I don't see anybody seeing that in the cards for Notre Dame or saying that. I think it's universally accepted inside Notre Dame. Next year's somewhat of a rebuilding year in a lot of ways, which, if you followed this show for any amount of time, I don't like hearing that. I've been saying for years, how does Brian Kelly get to where it's a reload, not a rebuild. Those are two totally different processes and things. Every year I've had this show, I've said, how does Notre Dame get to where it's a reload, not a rebuild? I don't know, but we're not there, and it's a rebuild. Okay? It is. It's a rebuild. I don't like it, but it's apparent to me this is a rebuild. Okay? So, is the playoff a realistic thing for next year that people are saying we could reach? I haven't seen anybody saying that at all. So I think it's universally accepted next year's a rebuild. I'm not going to like it. I'm not going to accept it, because after a dozen years, you should have people ready to come in and play elite football now. But here we are, a dozen years, and we're rebuilding. 12 years, and we're rebuilding, not reloading. Okay? So I don't like it. I'm not going to accept it. I'm going to get mad. But it's the facts. It's a rebuilding year. I don't think anybody expects us to get to the playoff. Maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised, and this will all go better than what we're thinking. Guys will develop better than we're thinking. Maybe there's a revelation at quarterback with Cone or Joe Montana. Tyler Buckner, who knows? Who knows? But I don't see anybody in or outside Notre Dame picking Notre Dame to be a playoff team next year. So that's 2021. Now let's move to 2022. Your first game is against Ohio State at the Horseshoe. Then you're at North Carolina. You're at USC. You do get Clemson at home. So the issue with 2022 is you're playing two of the three best programs there's been the last 10 years. Okay? 2023, you start out with Ohio State at home this time, but you're at Clemson. You do get Southern Cal at home. But my question is, when you're looking at those 2 years, 22 and 23, both years, you're playing two of the three top teams in the country both years. On top of throwing Southern Cal back in the mix every year, your ACC teams, all of that. But you're looking at playing two of the top three teams in the country both these years. I already talk about all the time the challenge Notre Dame's going to have as a one-loss team getting into the playoff. Most years, they're going to need help. If you want to convince me, John, I think we could split Ohio State, Clemson, each of those years, win 1-1, lose 1-1. Even then, that means you have to win every other game and go 11-1. The problem with this is, particularly in the Ohio State situation, it's the first game of the year. It's the first game of the year, and it's just going to be really tough to take if you take beatdowns from the talent factory that's Ohio State to start the year. That's tough. That's real tough. You have no opportunity to build momentum into this season, at least get through September feeling good. So I'm not saying that's guaranteed to happen, but where we sit right now, looking at what happened this year in the playoff, in the ACC title game, looking at all that and looking at the recruiting of Clemson and Ohio State, it's just tough for me to sit here today and pick us to beat those teams, one of them, let alone both of them. So that's the problem if you're telling me, 22, 23 will be the years that these young guys, they have next year to develop 21, then they'll be ready the next couple years for big-time football. I'm all for it, but you better get really good really fast. Really fast. Okay? Have you seen the talent on Ohio State's recruiting classes that we're going to be playing those years? You better get really, really good really, really fast. By really, really good, I mean way better than we were this year. Okay? The team that everybody thought was great, really good, great, whatever, for part of the season, you better be way better than that if you think you're going to knock off one or two of these teams. Not to mention, even if you knock off one, you got to win all your other games both years just to be in consideration for the playoff with one loss. Then hope everything works out to where you make it with one loss. That's tough. That's really, really tough. So the problem I see is 21's a rebuild, 22 and 23, you're playing two of the best programs in the land. So are either of those years playoff years? You plan on beating Ohio State and Clemson and closing that gap and doing all this just next year and then in 22 be ready for it? I hope so, but I don't know if that's realistic. I just don't. Let's say Cone starts next year as quarterback. Then we hand off the baton to Tyler Buckner the next year. His first start would be at the Horseshoe. Good luck. Good luck. Okay, so that's the problem I'm running into looking at where this playoff run is coming from. So that leads you to 2024. Upper class kids from the current transition that we're in now that's going to take place over the next year or two. Okay, you are at Texas A&M, which is an interesting series we have coming up. At Texas A&M, at USC, then you do have Florida State and Miami at home in 2024. So I kind of think if I'm looking at these 4 years, 2024 is the best chance. Okay, so you're avoiding Clemson and Ohio State, and then you have all these other teams combined with the fact that our guys that are going to be young the next year or two should be upperclassmen by that point. So I think 2024 is your best shot. Now, you're going to say, John, if you're saying that, how could you get mad next year and the year after that if we don't make it? If you're saying it's only realistic in 2024, I'm still going to be mad because you got to be in reload, not rebuild mode by now. So it's not acceptable to me, but it's reality that I'm talking about. Those are different things. Just because I'm telling you what I think the reality is doesn't mean I'm accepting of it. You got to be in reload, not rebuild mode after a dozen years, or you haven't recruited and developed good enough, period. Period. End of discussion to me. This is Notre Dame. This ain't Kansas or Kentucky or something, okay? A dozen years. You got to be reloading, not rebuilding by now. I'm over it, okay? I'm over it. Sick of every 2 to 3 years acting like an F5 tornado came through South Bend. You got to rebuild everything. Rebuild the whole town. To hell with that. Reload. Reload. Don't rebuild, okay? So I guess what you're looking at is win one for the Gipper, win one for BK as he heads out his last year. Okay, so maybe that's the angle, and these guys do pull it off, and Brian Kelly wins a championship his last year at Notre Dame. You couldn't make a more perfect Notre Dame movie start to finish than the ups and downs of the Kelly era, and it ends with him being raised on the shoulders of the players, and he wins a championship and goes out in style. I hope that happens. But when you look at Kelly's years left, I don't think you're honestly looking at a situation where you have a legit playoff chance all 4 years. I have a problem with that. I hate it. I don't like it. It's not where we should be after a dozen years, but it's the reality. So I think this is all shaping up to be a 2024 one last run. You better make it and win one for the Gipper, win one for Kelly on the way out. Do you guys see it different? I've seen people talking about 22, and I've seen Notre Dame people talk about, yeah, next year's going to be a little bit of a rebuild, but then we'll be all ready to go in 22 and 23. Did they all not look at the schedule? How are you magically just going to get way more talent than two programs that are way ahead of you already in a year? Those are my questions. It's not impossible. Anybody can win on any given day, all that stuff. But I'm just looking at the evidence in front of me. So that's where I think we're kind of at. Do I accept it? No, but it's the reality of where I see this being at. Now, despite all this, I'm in a more positive mood than I thought I would be during this discussion. This is something I've been thinking about for a while since our season ended in dramatically horrifying fashion yet again with the last 2 games. I've been thinking about this, and here's why I'm positive. The reason I'm positive, despite that glass half empty look at the rest of the Kelly tenure, the reason I'm positive is I think I'm in love with Marcus Freeman. I think I have a man crush on the guy. I love everything about him so far. 100%. I love everything. I've seen the videos on Twitter of him interacting with the defensive players at Cincinnati. I love everything about it. The energy, the vibe, the camaraderie, the communication, all of it. It's exactly what I want Notre Dame to have. All the statistics from his time at Cincinnati. I love every single one of them. All they point to is success, success, success. Good, good, good. The testimonials, everybody who's played for him, talked about him, coached with him, played with him, everything. Everybody loves the guy. The recruiting results at Cincinnati were fantastic. And in 9 days, he helps Notre Dame land a 4-star defensive lineman most people thought was a lean somewhere else. Suddenly, Freeman gets to Notre Dame. Him and Mike Elston get it done. That's the other thing. Credit needs to go to Mike Elston for a lot of things. In a lot of ways, he has been, I think, Kelly's best assistant long term. And what he's done with the defensive line is impressive. Okay. But with recruiting especially. So no doubt Elston deserves credit, okay, on the Tyson Ford commitment. But it's not a coincidence to me. He ain't on the radar, and then Marcus Freeman's there, and a week later, we have this 4-star guy, okay? This isn't run-of-the-mill guy. He's kind of decent, whatever. This is a guy who's 9th overall at his position, 117th ranked player of any position in the nation. Totally leaning somewhere else. Freeman gets Notre Dame. Boom, 9 days. Lands a big-time player. I love every single thing about it. I love every single thing about it. I also see that now Freeman's bringing Chad Bowden from Cincinnati over with him, okay, to help at Notre Dame. Here's what I like about that. Go ahead and start building your supporting staff, Coach Freeman. Go ahead. I'm telling you guys, I never feel this way or think this way because I'm such a glass half empty realist. You guys don't realize how glass half empty I am. I'm the guy getting on a plane going, you know what? I might never get to Florida. This thing, it's a machine. One thing goes wrong and I might not make it. I think that every time I fly somewhere, that this might be it, okay? So despite all that, I'm telling you guys, I have a special feeling about Marcus Freeman. I have a special feeling, and one that I very rarely ever get because my nature doesn't allow it. I have that feeling Freeman's special. And that might not be just me or everybody thinks it or what. I'm telling you guys, I got a feeling this is the guy. And that's where this conversation comes full circle. I'm starting to look more at what Marcus Freeman could do when Brian Kelly leaves than think of Brian Kelly's going to get it done in the next 4 years. So here's what I need. I need Notre Dame to make sure they keep Marcus Freeman in the building till Brian Kelly's done. I need it. I'm leaning on that for something positive because here's what I think. Here's what I think. You might have an opportunity to have the hottest under 40 up-and-coming coach that everybody likes in your building already. Okay? Think about the recent lineage of Notre Dame coaches that have not gotten over the hump, got the job done. Go back to Lou and everything after Lou then, okay? What is the one path Notre Dame has never chosen for head coach? The one path. The extremely young, energetic, up-and-coming, modern-aged coach. It's the one angle Notre Dame's not gone down, at least in my lifetime. That's the one path they haven't tried, okay? I am ready and willing to try something different. If this guy keeps recruiting this well, the defense keeps putting up good numbers. In 1 or 2 years, when suitors start wanting to offer this guy jobs, Notre Dame needs to double down, double his salary, give him $5 million a year the last 2 years, and tell him, when Kelly's done, this is all yours. What will he be? 39, 40 years old at that point? You're going to be the head coach of Notre Dame. Do whatever you want. Go win a title. He'll be settled in at Notre Dame, comfortable at Notre Dame, understand the challenges at Notre Dame by then. He'll understand the dynamics of the recruiting challenges, what works, what doesn't. This all times out perfect. Notre Dame needs to keep this guy in their building. That's the plan I would do. Next year and then the next 2 years, people are going to start sniffing around him. You make an under-the-table deal, give him $5 million a year to run the defense, then this whole thing's his. He'll be 40 years old. He could coach at Notre Dame 20 years and only be 60. Okay? So if this plays out the way all the evidence indicates with his history and present, I'm all for this. It is the one path Notre Dame's never taken because they always think they need the elder statesman that's going to know how to polish a turd and be a politician in the meeting room and in the press conference and sucking up to all the people who write the fat checks that built the fancy booths at the new stadium, all this stuff, the fancy suites, okay? The one path Notre Dame's never taken is the young, hot, energetic guy under 40. You got him in your building. Monitor how it goes. If it's going well, don't let him leave. Don't let him leave. I have a very strong feeling about this, and I never have a strong, positive feeling about much with Notre Dame. I genuinely feel like this guy's different, and now he's in your building. So a large part of me thinks that might be our best chance at a championship. It has nothing to do with the rest of the 4 years of what's going on now. Give me that young, hot guy under 40. Give it to me if he's the one, okay? So that's where I'm at with all this. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself with Marcus Freeman. It's just every day more stuff points in the direction that he's dynamite fantastic. Dynamite fantastic. So Notre Dame should have the inside track at this hot name in coaching. Notre Dame should be the one with the hot, young, up-and-coming guy for once. It could change everything. Everything. So I'm open to it. I'm monitoring it. If it goes well the next 2 years, I'm paying the guy whatever he wants to stay. Under the table deal, he has the job when Kelly leaves. Okay, so I don't know what you think. Maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised and this rebuild goes quicker and everything comes together. Buckner's the quarterback and you knock off Clemson or Ohio State a couple times. I don't know. But based on Kelly's history, I see nothing that indicates that's likely. So forgive me that I'm looking to the future a little bit and I'm falling in love with Freeman every day. That's all I got. Talk to you later.